Hey, everybody. In today's episode, it's myself, Benjamin B., and a good friend of mine, Ryan Laab. Ryan comes on the show to talk about his depression, anxiety, self-harm, and ultimately what he did with drugs and alcohol to mask those unwanted feelings. Ryan talks about whenever he went to treatment for the first time in 2006, and that is when his life truly changed. We talk about spirituality in recovery, why it is so important, and the importance of having a strong community of people in your life when you are on this sobriety journey. We talk about all that and more. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we have a good friend of mine, Mr. Ryan Laab. Sir Labs, how are you?
I'm doing well, Tom. Thank you.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com, and ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, peeps?
Yes, sir.
So true.
What's up, Ryan?
Not too much, brother. Not too much.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
This has been a long time in the making.
Yeah. We've been friends now well over a decade now.
Yes.
When I met you, you were in early recovery.
Early, probably what, a year?
Yeah. Your wife was my wife's roommate at the time.
Yes, in Lantana.
And I remember Amanda asking me to meet you to see how I felt about your recovery process. And what did I think about how you were doing in recovery at that time?
Do you remember what you said?
Oh, this is going to be good. I don't know any of this.
Pull that mic a little closer.
Yeah. So I asked her if she knew how much time you had, how much clean time you had. Did you regularly go to meetings? Did you have a sponsor?
You asked her all this stuff?
I said, well, you got to find out these answers. You need to know this stuff,
Yeah.
Because, the old adage in the first year of recovery, don't pursue relationships and focus on your recovery. And
Well, in my defense, I had 3.5 years sober this time.
Yeah.
And I really, full transparency, I wasn't going to a lot of meetings at that time.
Yeah.
And so whatever she told you, if she told you I was going to a lot of meetings, she was lying. Because I wasn't at that time.
Or you lied to her.
Or maybe I did lie to her.
It is possible. You were certainly sweet on her.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
Well, so that's how far me and Mr. Labs go back.
Yeah.
And I do remember us meeting, well, not meeting, but remember we did the men's group?
Yeah. You had at the church, we did a recovery group for men.
Yep.
And we were reading that book, Life's Healing Choices.
Correct.
By Rick Warren, which really is a recovery book without using the word recovery. Really talking through finding healing from your struggles in life, from painful experience in life, and really a God-centered focus on finding that healing. So I think it's one of those books that's really popular maybe in the church world, and people don't recognize that they're working a recovery program.
Ben, have you heard of that book?
I have not.
Life's Healing Choices by Rick Warren. We'll link it.
Yeah.
I don't remember the book, but I remember it being helpful.
Yeah.
It was me, you, and a couple other people.
A couple other guys.
Yeah, I guess anonymity.
Some who have gone by the wayside since then.
Yeah. So anyways, I wanted to bring you on, Ryan, because obviously we know a lot about each other.
Yeah.
But when we look at somebody's transformation in terms of a recovery sense, it's oftentimes, when if somebody meets you from anywhere.
Yeah, sure.
First impressions. Oh, Ben, let me ask you, have you met Ryan outside of my 40th birthday party?
Our 40th birthday party.
Our 40th. Yeah, do you remember that? We're born same exact day.
I didn't know that part. That was not made
It was his birthday, too.
Well,
Did you bring him a gift?
Gypped on gifts, right?
I did.
No, because no one told me it was his birthday, too.
Oh, well, anyways, we had a birthday party.
Steve brought me a gift card.
Okay, but first glance at Mr. Ryan Laab over here. What do you think? What goes through your head? Now, you don't know his story, or you know his story, but the point I'm
bit.
trying to make is we run into these people, throughout our lives. We have no idea what their history is. And this is somebody that I would say is a true transformation as to what recovery has to offer people.
Absolutely. We see that all the time where it actually just happened to me out at the football field the other night. I was talking to a lady, and she's looking at, and I've known her, she's our team mom for Weston's football team. And I just started talking to her a little bit about recovery and stuff. And ended up telling her, we talked about Blake, who coached with us and passed away from a fentanyl overdose and stuff like that. But she's like, I had no idea. I see you today. And that's the same kind of thing. Like, I look at you, there's no way to know that somebody had a past issue with any kind of drug, really.
Sure.
You can't hide recovery. There's that saying. Like,
so here's what I want to do. I want to go this way. Normally, I would say, Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us, your history, where you grew up, stuff like that. I want to go the opposite.
I will say this. I wish you didn't tell me what your drug of choice was, because if I had to guess, I would have guessed that.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
You could just tell different
All
personalities.
right, well, I don't want to give too much away.
I know, we're not. It's that vital sixth sense.
Tell us what you do now, like kind of what your family life, what you do now for work, all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm married to my beautiful bride, Jess, who was your wife's roommate when I met her.
Yeah.
They had lived together for a while when Jess and I started dating.
Can I pause you real quick?
Yeah.
Was it Amanda or Jess that slept with a steak knife?
That was Amanda, because
Okay.
Jess was out of town. So your wife slept with a steak knife under her pillow because she thought she heard something in the house. So she wanted to have a steak knife. There's all sorts of wacky adventures that they had,
My wife is a straight up scaredy cat.
Yeah.
But anyways, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. So Jess and I have been married over 10 years, 10 and a half years. And we have two sons. We have two boys, and both of our sons are adopted through the foster care system. Our older son is going to actually turn 7 tomorrow.
Oh, that's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yeah. He'll be 7 tomorrow. And then our younger son is a little over 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And both of them have been with us most of their lives, the majority of their lives. So that's what our family makeup looks like.
Own a home. You have a nice home in Royal Palm Beach.
Yeah. Own a home. I work at a local church here in South Florida. And I do, part of my job is what's traditionally referred to as congregational care or pastoral care. I walk with people during some of the more difficult seasons in life, helping with funerals, pastoral, like counseling when people are walking through difficult seasons, divorce, tough diagnosis, other issues that just come about, people have. And then I help as kind of the tip of the spear with our charge to reach the recovery community and help the recovery community as a church. So that's what I do for work.
And you've been there for how long?
I've worked at the church just about 9 years now. I have the title pastor, so I'm a pastor, which is pretty crazy when you hear the rest of the story to think that that's what I'm doing with my life. But I think God has a sense of humor. I think God has a real sense of humor. But even like one of your kind of catchphrases that you guys hang on to here of "let your mess be your message," right? It's similarly let the things in life that has tested you be your testimony. Those struggles that we've had and conquering those struggles give us access to speak into other people's lives. There is a camaraderie that you have with people when you have a shared struggle. You've been through a similar struggle. It gives you access to speak into other people's lives in a way that if you don't have that shared experience, you don't have that access.
Yeah.
I like to use the word access.
Yeah.
I've never heard it put that way, but that describes it literally perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, here's an entry ticket.
Yep. I remember, so we have a recovery program at the church. And I remember the first time when I was in charge of that recovery program, sharing my testimony, in church we use the term testimony a lot. It's my story, right? Sharing my story of what life looked like, how God kind of stepped in and changed my life and what life looks like now. Sharing my experience, strength, and hope. So I'm sharing that with the folks, and there's some volunteers there that help with this ministry that had been there for a long time. So I share my story, and I'm brutally honest, because why not, right? Like it doesn't hurt me to be honest, and it could potentially help somebody else if I'm willing just to put it all out there. So I share my story and the ups and the downs and the ugly parts. And I remember this guy came up to me afterwards who had been a volunteer, and he's an older guy from Lower Alabama. And he goes, "Man, you're one of us." And I said, "Well, that's my story." And he goes, "I thought you're a pastor. I thought maybe you just got too drunk a couple of weekends and they said, put that guy in charge of those people over there because they didn't know what to do with you. You're one of us." And I'm like, "Well, you heard my story. Yeah, I've had some really hard struggles with drugs and alcohol." And again, him hearing that, now he's more willing to help, to serve others, to be a part of everything that was going on, because it wasn't like, that feeling of the outsider coming to help you poor suffering addicts, like it wasn't, I wasn't coming as a savior. I'm coming as someone who can relate in a deep and real way because I've been there, and I think people much prefer walking with people who they can relate to than people who are there to fix them,
I always say we speak the same language. I speak fluent junkie.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Like even today we were sitting with the family, and like the way that I talk to the parents is different from the person we're trying to help.
Sure.
Even though we're all sitting in the same room.
Yeah.
And you just got to let that person know, like, hey, dude, your parents might not understand, but we get you.
Yeah.
And everything that you say is okay.
Yeah.
You can tell the truth here.
Yeah.
It's just so important.
Yep.
What's interesting too is when we meet these people, or even in the position that you're in through the church and stuff like that are on a surface level and even mentally, emotionally, spiritually broken, they don't think, a lot of times they don't think they can have a relationship with God, let alone worthy of having a relationship with God.
Yeah.
So whenever they do see and come across somebody like you that has been through, done, and in probably many cases done worse. I mean, if we're on a scale of whatever, they're like, "Oh man," because God in and of itself, some people, especially addicts and alcoholics, they don't have a good relationship with God. And oftentimes it's very, they have religion rules and regulations. I mean, Ben, how many times do we see and hear people, and Ryan, obviously you've heard this too, like, "I'm just not into church because I'm not into the, the kneeling and the this and the that." And it's like, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
We're just talking about having a relationship with God. And you may not feel like you're worthy of it, and that's okay right now, but I'm here to tell you that you are. And the reason I'm able to tell you that you are is because I was once in your shoes.
Yeah.
And for that, I think, and that was my story. Like, I'm born and raised a Christian, kind of. Grandma would take me to church. My only recollections of church was, she's taking me in and all the old ladies are coming up and pinching my cheeks and, "Oh, how cute," and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And my dad would take me on Sundays, and I think that was more just like, go to Sunday school and he gets a couple hours to himself type thing, But it imprinted, it definitely imprinted my ideas of God.
Yeah.
But through my alcoholism and through my addiction, I didn't have a relationship with God. So when it came time to get sober, and I come across these 12 steps, and it's like, all this God talk, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Because I'm not used to it. You know, I don't believe that I'm worthy. But the reason that the switch kind of flipped for me was because I was filled. I had a bunch of people in a room that were just like me, that felt worthy, that developed this relationship. So, you know, that's why I think it's so important. And oftentimes people in recovery have the strongest, most deepest, intimate relationships with God than anybody.
Yes.
You know,
I always make it a point when I share my story in 12-step fellowship, like, I would say the biggest point that I hit home beginning to end in my story is that I'm a guy that wanted nothing to do with God. Because I'm guesstimating that probably half the people sitting in that room, because they're brand new, feel that exact way. I don't want to paint this picture like where I sit down at the front and I found God and now I'm sober 14 years. Like, I let them know adamantly. And we got a good buddy named Matt that always says, we help people find God that didn't even know they were looking for God.
Yeah.
So, all right. So obviously, let's talk about what got you to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like similar to yourself, I always went to church as a young man, right? But I went to church because my dad's a significantly larger human being than I am. And he would say, we're going to church.
And you're a big guy.
I'm pretty, well, I wasn't then though, you know.
How tall are you?
Yeah. What do you mean? You're like 6'5".
I'm 6'2".
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
6'2".
Seems.
And my dad's he was 6'1". He's probably coming back down a little bit now.
Okay.
But you know, I went to church like more culturally, right? Like we go to church. You're in Sunday school. I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania. You're from big city, Pennsylvania. I feel
Pittsburgh or Philly?
But I'm straight down.
No, me.
You, but Pittsburgh, yeah.
Okay, good. Yes,
I know where you're from.
I know, but some people get them mixed up.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Crazy.
It's because they both have the most atrocious accent in the world.
They
man.
They do.
So I'm from South Central Pennsylvania. The closest big city to me is Baltimore. So I'm right at the bottom of the state. But my dad had been in the Army until I was in third grade, so we moved around a lot. And then when I was in third grade, he retired and we moved to this town in Pennsylvania. And that's really where I grew up. My dad in his military days was certainly an excessive drinker, you know, like, and I hear these stories and I always ask, is it okay if I share this stuff? And he said, well, it's the truth. So yeah, it's okay. Like he would just drink after work and pass out, you know, just kind of just a gross drunk, right? Not a mean guy, just absent because of that. Well, he really slowed down and stopped his drinking when we moved to Pennsylvania.
But you're in the third grade.
Third grade.
Point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the men in my family, if you go back past my dad, you know, my grandpa on my mom's side, the great uncles, everybody, they all were problem drinkers. You know, it's, I certainly came by my stuff pretty naturally, you know. I just added drugs to the mix because I'm an overachiever, you know, like to shoot for the moon, you know. But like early life, for lack of a better word, was just kind of normal, you know. I'm one of 4 kids. I got 2 big brothers and a younger sister. Elementary school, pretty normal. When I got to middle school, that's when I really started to have some struggles. And I would assume a lot of people that we talk to, middle school is when the junks kind of started, you know. I'm not the coolest guy. I'm not the smartest guy. I'm literally terrible at every sport. So that year, you know, 6th grade, they take all the elementary schools. You're already confused. Physical changes are happening. Emotional changes are happening. They dump you all together like Lord of the Flies and kind of figure it out. And I really had a hard time figuring out how I fit in. And that caused some depression and anxiety and ended up like shutting down in 6th grade. And ended up, there were times even then at that young age, 12, 13, that I was harming myself, thinking if I was hurt, I wouldn't have to go to school. You know?
Like self-harm.
Like self-harm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. My parents took me to my first psychiatrist. Then I got medicated, started seeing my first therapist, and, you know, went back to school. And if you would ask my middle school classmates about Ryan, they say he's literally the class clown. Like I got the superlative for class clown. So from the outside looking in, everything was great. This guy's always happy. But from the inside looking out, like I was really struggling, having a hard time. By the time I got to high school, I had some issues with bullying, and again, just totally shut down, wasn't functioning. And I began self-harming like substantially, like cutting myself and hurting myself pretty bad. And I fell into a pattern where I'd be hospitalized for a while. I'd do a little bit better. I'd go back to school. I'd feel a little bit overwhelmed. I'd shut down. I'd hurt myself. I'd be hospitalized again, and repeat and repeat and repeat, where I spent the majority of my sophomore year in mental hospitals. And one of those was a long-term residential program, and I had some pretty horrific experiences while I was there. Eventually got back home, and it was around that time I remember my older brother and I polishing off a whole bottle of Southern Comfort to get there.
Oh boy.
Right. Like, okay, so sweet liquor, drank the whole thing, sick as a dog, puking my guts out. Not scared, not anxious, not depressed. And so that sensation, that kind of hiding place that I found in booze was something that I really, really liked. And so it was something that I pursued pretty hard, you know. I ended up dropping out of high school, what would have been my junior year, and started working in factories and different jobs. You know, alcohol went from drinking to smoking some dope, to doing some hallucinogenics, to doing harder drugs, and fell into this a new pattern now where I'd live with my parents for a little bit. I'd get a job, save up a little bit of money, get an apartment with some friends, move out, spend all my money on drugs, lose my job, lose my apartment, and move back in with my parents. And that pattern went on for the best part of 10 years. You know, I kind of had created a new identity through that, where, you know, in middle school and high school, I was kind of like, well, Ryan's the crazy guy, you know, not a great identity to hold on to, but something that I could say, this is who I am. Now I'm the most obnoxious guy at every party. I'm the guy that's probably going to get drunk, probably going to pee on your couch, probably going to be, you know, loud and annoying, probably going to steal all your beers, probably going to steal other stuff. Not a good identity to have, but it's who I thought I was, right? Like that's the only thing I had to hang on to. And that coping mechanism of drugs and alcohol was the only thing that I was using to get through those painful days. Because the depression's still there, anxiety's still there, the thoughts of self-harm are still there. But instead of acting on those thoughts now, instead of hurting myself physically with a razor blade or whatever, I'm hurting myself with liquor and drugs. You know, I'm beating on myself in a kind of a different way. And so that went on, like I said, for the 10 years or so. Been medicated since I was 12, and I went to my psychiatrist to get a refill of the medication. And the doctor said, hey, before we give you a refill, we need to run your blood work. And they sent off my blood work. And the doctor called me in and said, hey, I'm just going to be straight with you. Your liver enzymes are just off the chart, man. Like your body cannot sustain the way you're living. Like it's not going to work. If you keep doing this, you're going to damage your liver and you really could die. Well, honestly, I hadn't really lived at all yet, you know.
How old are you at this point?
28.
Okay.
And that was one of the times where I really felt like I had a moment of clarity. And I did something that in hindsight was really smart. And I shut up and I listened and I asked the people who loved me, my parents. I asked this doctor, well, if I don't want to die, what do I need to do? And they said, well, we want you to go to treatment in sunny South Florida. And so on March 6, 2006, I got on an airplane and I flew to Palm Beach County, Florida. I went to a treatment program in Delray Beach for about 8 months. Moving out of that treatment program, moved into a halfway house. And I lived in the halfway house for over a year. And really, in that halfway house, I learned how to be a grown-up, right? Like I learned how to kind of live life on life's terms, and working my steps with a sponsor is when I had my own adult surrender to God, where I asked specifically Jesus to be my Lord and Savior between two pink halfway houses in the hood in Delray Beach, Florida. And, you know, I sometimes joke, you know, and from that point on, it's all been rainbows and lollipops and puppy dogs, and life's never been bad. And it's, you know, that's not how it works, right? That is not the promise of recovery, that you'll never have problems. But from that time forward, I started to have something I hadn't had since I was a kid. I started to have some hope that there was a plan. I started to have some hope that I could have a life, right? That my life wasn't going to be wasted, that my life wasn't going to have any value or be of any worth, that there was opportunity for me to have a good life. And I hadn't felt that in a really long time, you know? And, you know, so since then, all sorts of things have happened. You know, amazing wife, high school dropout. I have a master's degree now. Like, God really has shown up and blessed me in ways that I didn't expect ever to see. But there are, for all of us, there's still really hard days and confusing days and tough days. But how I approach those days now is a lot different than maybe I would have in the past.
Wow. Pretty amazing, huh, Ben?
Yeah, I was just taking all that in. Like, literally what was going through my head is as you were explaining, like, the middle school, high school years.
Yeah.
I'm like, that'll help me. What I just heard will help me tell my story better.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's the same. The self-harm, suicidal ideation, depression.
Yeah.
Just the way that you explained it, like what was going on internally in your mind. It's, even after all these years of telling my story, it's still hard to express that pain. And you did that very well.
Yeah.
Like, I could feel that. I don't know. That was deep for me. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
That's why That's why I brought Ryan in. We're actually going to be baptizing Ben after this episode. Yeah. No, I didn't know about the self-harm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I ask what type of self-harm? You mentioned cutting.
Cutting, yeah. Mostly cutting myself.
When I was to the point of hospitalization?
Oh yeah, I've had to many times when I was in high school, I had to wake my dad up and say, we got to go to the emergency room and get stitches. I can see an artery. I can see, you know.
Razor blades?
Mostly razor blades. And, you know, have to go get stitched up and put back together. And, you know, that's one of those things for many of us as we're in recovery and we look back on the damage that we caused peripheral to ourselves with our families. And that's one of those things, like, now that I'm a dad, I wouldn't even begin to understand what that must have felt like for my dad.
Right.
Yeah.
To be woken up and said, we got to go get stitches again. You know, it's emotional terrorism, right? Like, I held them hostage. My addiction held them hostage, you know?
Can I ask you a question? I want to get your take on this, if you could. A lot of times when it comes to drugs and alcohol, like, I'll ask clients, what did that drug do for you? And I think it's a little bit easier to explain drugs and alcohol. Like, I shoot heroin. And that warm feeling that, everything's okay now. But when it comes to self-harm, I don't know that we've had anybody come on here before and really talk about it to the extent that you have. Like, and it's something that I've experienced too.
Yeah.
How would you explain, like, what did it do for you? Because I'd like our listeners, our parents, our loved ones to hear, like, because they're saying to themselves, how could cutting yourself make you feel better?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. And really, Ben, if you look at the statistics now of young people that do cut themselves,
it's off the charts.
It's crazy. It's crazy. When I was, you know, so that time in my life was 30 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only boy that I knew that cut themselves. There were young ladies that had kind of been in that world, but I didn't know there weren't any guys that did that, you know. I think part of it for me was a buildup of emotions, of feelings, of the anxiety, the stress, the depression, and needing a release of some kind. There is also a self-loathing, right? Like, I didn't like myself. I would say I hated myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some part to me that it was punitive. Like, I deserve some pain. I should experience some pain.
Mm-hmm.
I've hurt people and I'm no good. And so I should experience some pain. And even to a certain extent, there was a desire to sometimes just feel something, like feeling numb, right? Needing some type of stimulus that, and I think that it was almost like a disassociation for self-preservation. Like your mind, if you're so overwhelmed with depression, and if people who have never dealt with depression hurts. Like it physically hurts to be chronically depressed or chronically anxious. That hurts. And your mind wants to preserve itself, wants to keep itself safe, and so sometimes you'll disassociate from those feelings. You won't live in those feelings. Where our bodies crave feelings, right? Our mind craves some type of stimulation, and so in that feeling of numbness, sometimes that pain would at least allow you to have some type of sensation,
something to like focus on.
Yeah, something to focus on, something to ground you, or something to get you out of your mind, And I don't think there is a universal for everyone that self-harms. But for me, I don't think it was an attention-seeking behavior, because I would wear long-sleeve shirts and nobody would know, Only when I had to get some help from a doctor to stitch me up would I share that, So I think very much similarly to alcohol and drugs, it is just a different inappropriate coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for some relief from the feelings that I'm going through right now. And so this is available to me. It's the coping mechanism I've landed on, that I found right now. And so it's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And part of our job as people in recovery is to learn new coping mechanisms, and the coping mechanisms that are effective for us. Because there's not one answer for everybody, Like you guys like to lift weights, right? Like that's a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it used to be. Ben, yeah, me not so much. I like to eat something.
I mean, maybe that's what I like about it, the pain and suffering, honestly.
Yeah?
Like, I don't know that I've talked about this on, maybe I have. I might have mentioned it to you, but these scars on my knuckles, I wasn't a cutter. I used to grind my knuckles into the concrete. Like, I'd find the most jagged concrete I could find, just until they bled. And that's what those are.
Really?
That went on for a while. That was like a lot my freshman, sophomore year of high school.
Hmm.
But like it's just hard to explain to people how there can actually be like a release from that, or relief.
Yeah.
It's hard to, because you get euphoria from drugs and alcohol. People understand that. Like,
yeah. It feels good. Yeah.
Yeah. But like I wouldn't say there's anything euphoric about that, but for some reason it's relieving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just haven't been able to find the words for it. That's why I asked you.
Yeah.
2 episodes ago, but by the time this one comes out, within the last 5 episodes, there's an episode that I recorded with Tech. He's a good friend of mine. You weren't here for this, but he's another one. It's crazy. So he was a cutter too, and he grew up in California, and we talked a lot about that. And because I never had that, and I'm like, what? I just can't wrap my head around it. Like, why? I said, I got a sleeve of tattoos. That thing hurt like a bitch. I can't imagine intentionally cutting. And he said the same exact thing as you.
Yeah.
He's like, it only makes sense to people that have done it.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, the farther you're away from it, the less sense it makes to you,
Yeah.
Like that. But in general, the insanity of our former lives, the farther we get away from those days, the more and more it's like we're telling a story about somebody else,
Do you ever think about those days anymore? Or is it just like more when you're talking or sharing your story? Like, do you ever reflect on those, like in your own time?
Well, I think there's still times where I deal with some depression and some anxiety and worry. I wouldn't say for the most part it's at a place where it would be a clinical need to go and get help, but something that I can recognize in myself. Like I'm just feeling down, I'm just feeling overwhelmed, or I'm tired for no reason, or whatever it is. And like I've made it a point in my years in recovery to study me, right? Like I am a scientist of me. And I know when I'm feeling those things, I need to verbalize it, right? I need to talk to somebody, and usually that's my wife. I need to say, hey, I feel off. I feel sad, whether or not there's a reason for it or not. But like I don't have thoughts of self-harm, but I also don't have thoughts of using anymore. Like that's just not where my brain goes, It just doesn't go to that. There's no relief there anymore.
When you entered into treatment, so you went into treatment when?
In 2006. Yep.
May?
March 6th.
March of 2006. You enter into treatment. This is your first time in treatment.
Yeah. I mean, I had been in mental hospitals, and I had been in a residential mental health program, mostly as a minor, and then one time in my 20s in a mental hospital. I had hurt myself and went to a mental hospital.
Ben says that he has rewards points to all the psych wards in Palm Beach County.
There you go. You got a punch
45th
card.
Street.
Yeah.
Take us back to, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but you go into treatment. You obviously have a rough first, call it quarter of your life. Mm-hmm. Rough in the terms of all the emotional turmoil, self-harm, drug abuse, the addiction, alcoholism.
I've had some struggles. Yeah.
You've had your fair share of struggles.
Yeah.
You definitely don't go into treatment and then boom, everything's all better.
No.
Like take us through that process of treatment. Like what's going through your head? Mm-hmm.
You've been sober since 2006?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 18 years. You're coming up on 19 years in March?
In March, 19 years. Yeah.
March 6th. Don't forget that, Ben.
Yeah.
March 6th.
March 6th.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I got down here, I had to do a week in medical detox.
And you were detoxing off of what? Just everything?
Everything. But my alcohol consumption in particular had gotten pretty extreme.
Yeah.
When I went out the night before I came for treatment, as many people do.
I didn't.
No.
I was kind of, I went, no. It's kind of silly thinking back on it. And sometimes it even crosses, not so much now, but like I remember.
You wasted your opportunity.
I went into treatment and everybody's like, oh, what'd you blow when you came in? And I'm like, zeros.
Yeah.
And they're like, zeros.
So to put in perspective how my disease had progressed, right? So I had kind of a normal last night out there. Went home. Actually, I learned a lot later that some friends drove me home and somebody followed me in my car.
That was nice.
Dropped my car. Very kind. So I get home probably about midnight, and I just throw up everything, purge everything, which is not normal.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose.
Yeah.
No, I'm just so drunk I just puked my guts out. Woke up about 8:00 in the morning. My dad drove me to Baltimore International Airport. Right? About an hour from my house, Baltimore, Washington International. Get on my airplane, fly down here. They pick me up at the airport, drive me to Del Rey. So a good 13, 14 hours after my last drink, and I blow 0.30.
Nice. Yeah,
So-
you were a real deal.
So the last night out there, I probably should have died from alcohol poisoning,
Mhm.
And so went to, like I said, detox for a week. I really think before I even came down here, I had reconciled the fact that I needed something to change.
Yeah.
Right. Like I realized that my life wasn't what it was supposed to be, that I wasn't helping myself, and I certainly wasn't helping anybody else. And so I had kind of came in with the mindset of, I'm going to do what they tell me to do so that I can have a different life. I know a lot of people don't go to treatment with that mindset, right? Like you had talked about it in one of your other episodes, the pressure of the spouse or the parents or the job, and those pressures aren't enough to get you to do the work, to get sober.
Right.
The pressure I had getting here was self-imposed pressure, right? Like I had held the mirror and looked at the mirror, which is one of the hardest things to hold. Looked at me and my life, and this is a very pastoral term here. I recognized that person in the mirror was a POS.
Oh, that's very pastoral.
Very pastoral. But I'm not supposed to be a POS.
Right.
I wasn't made to be a POS. And so I was determined to not live that way. I didn't want to live a life less than was available to me. I was done living scummy, right? I didn't want to live that way anymore. And so was willing to listen and take advice and take instruction and take rebuke and do the hard work with therapists to figure out, why was this the coping mechanism I chose? What was I hiding from? What were the feelings that I was having such a difficult time dealing with that I'd rather just hide in drugs and alcohol all my life? So I came in with the mindset of, I'm gonna do the work because I want to have a life, and not because I'm some superhero. Like I'm not trying to say I'm anything or all that. But I had decided I'm going to do what needs to happen. And I think for myself, that's why the process has worked. There are a lot of people that come because somebody else wants them to be somebody different. Well, it doesn't work that way. You've got to determine you want a different life. And if so, it's available. I mean, like I said, 18 years of sobriety, and I ain't Superman.
Right.
It is doing the next right thing and serving other people. There are promises of the steps, and I think those are promises of God. So,
when did you start recognizing, like, this is it? I've found, like, this sobriety thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is cool.
Yeah. So when I was living in the halfway house and other guys had decided they're going to the Kava bar or they're going to the Cheetah Club or whatever it is, and I had no desire to go with them to those places, that I'd rather stay and watch TV or go to a meeting than go with them to those things that at one point would have been attractive to me or had a draw to me. I recognized that things were changing inside me, right? I wasn't looking for an escape from life at that point, That's when I started to see that things were starting to look different,
Yeah. It's pretty crazy how people, you remove the drugs, you remove the alcohol, you incorporate some sort of spiritual program, how people change, even with medical interventions are obviously necessary in a lot of cases.
Sure.
Depression medicine, non-narcotic anxiety medicine, mood stabilizers and stuff like that. But I do think that there's something to be said, God really isn't given enough credit in the scientific world.
Yeah.
That a lot of these transformations that take place inside of people is directly attributed to their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the thing with me. I'm not a big medication person. I don't take any medications. I struggle taking ibuprofen. I'll take it, but I don't like to.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I was a raging drunk. I was a raging drug addict. There's no other explanation for my sobriety other than God.
Yeah.
There really isn't. And, people, that's always a hot topic and a debate. And that, it's fine. But in my opinion, it's just not worth debating.
Yeah.
It's my experience.
In my experience personally, and then I would say walking with hundreds, if not thousands of people in recovery, the ones that I see living a life that they want to live, first and foremost, it's having a relationship with God, and then having a relationship with a community of people.
Yeah.
A supportive community of people, whether that's a group of friends, whether that's people at a 12-step fellowship, whether that's a church family or whatever it is. In my experience, it's God, community, and then the other pieces are significantly less important and lower down on the totem pole of needs that we have.
What pieces would you say those are? Hang on one second. Your breathing's really heavy. Thank you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You sound like Darth Vader in the headphones. It's like,
Are you leaving that in?
I may, yeah. No, I am.
The Darth Vader part.
Chances are I'll forget the Darth Vader.
You're gonna leave Darth Vader in there?
Yeah, his breathing sounds like Darth Vader.
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead, put your lozenge in.
I got my lozenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of those other things, like at the church where I am, we use a program called Celebrate Recovery. Right.
Yeah.
It's a Christ-centered 12-step program. Same 12 steps you would encounter at any other fellowship. And then they've also incorporated these 8 principles. Truly, these 8 principles are a restating of the 12 steps. It's a similar language, kind of saying the same thing in the same kind of processing from a first step of surrender through a 12th step of service, essentially, right? That's a curriculum, right? The different fellowships, those are what I would refer to as curriculum. That's the material that you're using. I think God, community, and curriculum is much lower in importance.
Yeah.
There are people that don't go to meetings. There are people that do primarily their work maybe with a therapist, or do their work one-on-one with a sponsor or some kind of spiritual mentor. And that's okay, right? Like that's not, none of those things are out of bounds. There are people who their primary community is maybe a Bible study or, a small group associated with a church or a running club, out in the community or something. But they have that relationship with God and a desire to be different. And then they have supportive people around them that are also pursuing a healthy, good life. Like I said, curriculum is a distant third to me,
I say that all the time, don't I, Ben?
Community. That's Tom's word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you pulled the mic in.
That and all the things.
To me, we just talked about this recently on a podcast, and I feel like I talk about this all the time, so I won't spend much time on it, but you can work all the steps in the world. You can fill as many coffee cups as you want. You can fold the chairs. You can break them down. You can set them up. You can mop the floors. You can do all that stuff. But if you don't talk to people, you don't interact with people, you don't open up to people, it doesn't matter. You're not doing anything. The whole premise behind all of that stuff, in particular in a 12-step setting, is to number one, build community, obviously, and to fulfill on some sort of commitment, right?
Yeah.
Some of the strongest relationships I ever built in my sobriety was by way of being responsible for coffee.
Yeah.
Being responsible for sweeping the floor, setting up the chairs. Yep. And so I agree with you 100%. I mean, it is right. Relationship with God, community, curriculum.
Yeah.
What do you got, Ben?
Didn't you volunteer at the church just to date Amanda?
Well, Ben, I mean, I wanted to volunteer at the church because I felt like, correct, that was the only way I was going to.
Some ulterior motives there.
But that's okay. And that's my point.
God works in mysterious ways. God's like, hey, listen, if you're not going to come by way of drug addiction and alcoholism, I'm just going to throw a nice, beautiful woman.
My point is, arguably, the most important relationship, human being-wise, in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Yeah.
My wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, she is, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't know what you were getting at. Yes. Well, that was interesting. I mean, that was an interesting time of my life. And this is how crazy, like, my relationship with God was and the community and stuff like that. See, and I won't spend much time on this. When I came down to Florida, when I was drinking and drugging, it was common to sleep around.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what I did. It's what all of my friends, it's what all the girls did. It was, but when I got sober and I started developing this relationship with God, I was told, the typical, oh, you shouldn't get into a relationship for the first year. And I listened to that. But then it started getting deeper. And this is, I know God was working in my life because I didn't have the urge to pursue women. I didn't have the urge to go and have sex with random women, which was something that I did a lot. I didn't struggle with it in the sense of like prostitutes or anything like that, but it was just a common thing.
Yeah.
It's drinking culture.
Yes, exactly. It was the party culture. And then when that was, I didn't even, it never even crossed my mind. As a matter of fact, it was quite the opposite. And I was in 2 situations in my early sobriety where I was faced with the temptation of sleeping around. And I'm telling you, before sobriety, boom, I would have been on it. It would have been, you know, I would have acted on it. But both these times I ran.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, this isn't, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember making the conscious decision of I'm not going to pursue women in any form, any fashion, until I know that the right woman is put in my life. And it was at church that the right woman was put in my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 3.5 years sober. I didn't have sex with any women. The only woman I've ever been with in my sobriety has been my wife.
Wow.
You know, and that in and of itself, coming from myself who, you know, I wasn't by all means, don't get me wrong. Yes, I had my fun, but I wasn't like Gene Simmons.
He's telling us he's a stud. That's what he's being shy about.
Well, didn't you like take a man on a date and she told
a man?
Amanda.
Oh.
Tom.
Go ahead.
Didn't you take a man on a date and she later told you she was gonna tell you she didn't want to date you, but at that dinner, like,
yeah,
like,
do you remember that?
Man?
Do you remember that? She took me to City Cellar. Well, she didn't take me.
Yeah, but you went.
We
to City
went
Cellar.
to City Cellar. It was after a Sunday night service down at City Place, and we went to City Cellar. And her whole intention on going there that night was to break up with me.
Oh man!
And it was in that night that she decided that we were gonna get married.
Wow.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
What'd I say?
Yeah, how'd that happen?
I have no idea.
You just got like real deep, real quick, and
no, I didn't even know that was anything.
In hindsight,
no, like I don't even think she told me that until we were married.
Wow.
You know, like, hey, by the way,
yeah,
you know, and
I was gonna dump you that night.
Yeah,
but instead I decided I want to marry you.
There you go.
So, I mean, you know, for what it's worth, you're looking at 3 people here that have totally, completely transformed their lives.
Can I touch on that?
Go ahead.
Because this thought's been going through my head for like the last like 30 minutes. And you said earlier that when you tell your story, it's to the point where you feel like you're telling somebody else's.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
You know, near December will be 14 years of sobriety, and it just doesn't seem real. But I think this is the importance, at least for me, of like surrounding myself with people in recovery, because I do need that reminder once in a while, and it's not as often as it used to be. Like I'll hear somebody tell their story and it'll be like a kick in the gut.
Yeah.
And what you did today for me was like, oh crap, that really was me. Because I am getting to the point in my sobriety where like, I won't say I forget, like I know it happened.
Yeah.
But like right now I just got that pit in my stomach, like, oh, the way that you explained it literally brought me back, and I'm like, that's who I potentially could be again.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know, just that's the importance though of, because usually when I go to meetings, I'm big on going to literature meetings. Like I love big book meetings.
Yeah.
If it's going over the literature, I'm not huge on speaker meetings. I tend not to enjoy them as much, I guess. But I guess it's a reminder for me of why I need to probably go to some speaker meetings.
Yeah.
For that reminder. Because, dude, we forget, man.
Absolutely. I mean, we impress upon people in recovery to continue to work with newcomers, right? Continue to get yourself around newcomers, because it is a great reminder of where you could be with a matter of a couple of bad choices.
Yeah.
Right? Just a couple of bad choices. I was talking with someone today, and they were asking me about, well, do you think you could drink a little bit? Do you think most people who are addicts would be able to drink or would be able to use some substance to a certain and it forces you to remind yourself, like, I'm only a couple of bad decisions from losing what is an amazing, blessed life, right? Like it's very real that it is still there. Now it may be dormant, but it is still there. And I think we lose a lot of brothers and sisters in recovery who forget completely, right? They don't talk to anybody else in recovery. They're not seeing newcomers. They're not sharing their story with other people. And they start to believe these lies that, well, maybe I could try a couple gummies, or maybe I could have a couple of beers, and quickly their lives spiral out of control and they lose it all. And so I think we have to figure out what we need to do to keep ourselves grounded. Like, and yeah, maybe it is, let me go to a couple speaker meetings. Let me hear some other people's stories. I do at Celebrate Recovery, we do an orientation with newcomers. And Celebrate Recovery is a program designed for any hurt habit or hang up. Like, so there's people who are dealing with drugs and alcohol, and there are people who are dealing with people who are dealing with drugs and alcohol. And there are people that are working a 12-step program because life expectations just aren't matching up, and they just are trying to find something to help them.
Not to cut you off, any hurt habit or hang up?
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Okay.
Does that like include like sex addiction, stuff like that? Okay.
Absolutely. Which for people who don't know church, to think there's a place at church where people are talking about their sex addiction and their drug addiction and their anger addiction and their food addiction, it's so counter to what they think you would do at a church.
Right.
But a church is a gathering of broken people who are seeking healing and wholeness in Christ, right? If we're not playing church, and there are times where churches just play church and everything's perfect and everything's nice, but so we do an orientation every week. And just the other day, we had a bunch of young folks who came on a bus from a treatment program, and a druggy buggy, or have you ever heard the term Zan van?
No,
Yeah,
I like that.
That's
Good,
new,
right?
huh?
The Zan van.
The Zan van. But so these folks see Pastor Ryan talking from the platform, fairly polished. I'm not the greatest communicator, but afterwards they get to sit in this orientation and hear my story, like I shared my story with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to see Pastor Ryan has had this life with self-harm and drugs and alcohol and disappointment and pain. And now God has brought him to this place, and he's telling me that God loves me just as much as he loves him. There's some hope here, right? There's an opportunity for some hope. And being able to talk to those newcomers for me help keep me grounded, right? Help keep it fresh in me that couple of bad decisions and I could lose everything.
I mean, we've had a lot of clients that have come through here, and one of their first interactions was you.
Yeah.
By way of, because it's the one in Gardens campus.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't said the name of the church. I don't know if, are you not
You
allowed?
can. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know, because you didn't say. It's Christ Fellowship.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Phenomenal church. I think that they have done so much good work for not only myself and a lot of people close to me. It's where I met my wife, but the community
Mm-hmm.
and all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really amazing what they've done. And they don't play church.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing. I like how you put that. Like, there's people out there that play church, like, oh, everything's fine.
Yeah.
When it's in fact quite the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
it's a very inviting atmosphere for people that are broken.
I remember when I first started going to the church, and Drew was
Yeah.
our campus pastor.
Yeah.
And so at that point, going to I was sober 7 years, and the campus pastor from the platform spoke about recovery, but he didn't whisper, right? Because, many of us have had those experiences with churches where they say, oh yeah, I think there's a meeting on Tuesdays at 7. You go in the back door, it's down in the basement, pick up your cigarette butts.
Right.
Like, out of the goodness of our heart, we're going to allow you people to meet here. Whereas on a Sunday morning to the whole congregation, he's talking about recovery and he's not whispering. And so that really made an impression upon me.
Yeah.
Like I can have a history. I can have a past. I can have current problems, and still I'm welcome in this place, this church. And I think that's huge, right? As a pastor, one of my jobs, because of people's experience with church or thoughts around church, sometimes they want to put the pastor on a pedestal, right? Like, well, the pastor doesn't understand. The pastor's family never has hard times. The pastor doesn't have any problems. Well, my job is to knock myself off the pedestal and to show that there's equal footing for all of us here. And some of that is by just being incredibly honest and open with my own stuff.
Yeah.
Know?
Pastor Todd does a great job of that.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I love that you say that, because we do the same. I do the same thing with the clients here, because I'm just going to call it what it is.
Yeah.
And I'll even say this in group. I know a lot of them look at me and they're like, oh, he's got everything together.
Yeah.
But one of the most powerful things I think I can do is share my current struggles.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, I might be 14 years sober, but today sucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And just being open about that. Like,
yeah.
Because, we get put up on a pedestal too. Yeah. Especially Tom from YouTube.
Yeah. Hey.
Tom from YouTube.
But like, if we don't prepare people to understand, in your sobriety journey, you're going to have some really hard, painful days. If once they face them, they don't know how to handle them, because they just thought life would always be good now. When I'm working with guys who are in early recovery and they're in a relationship and it starts to look a little bit rocky, I always tell them, I want you to know you're about to have the most painful experience of your life. This first sober breakup is the most painful thing you are ever going to go through, because if you've had breakups in the past, you were able to go get drunk or able to go chase some girl or do whatever. You don't have those escape mechanisms anymore. Right. And so prepare to cry in the shower for a while, brother, because it's going to be really, really painful. And so, to your point, by being honest and saying, I have horrible days. I have days where I'm so confused why it's so tough and why it's so difficult and why this happened and that didn't happen. And I got to wrestle with those days. I got to wrestle through it and figure it out and get to the other side. And you will too, right? Like that gives people, there's no rose-colored glasses when they see the person who's on the other side saying it's still tough, And
it molds us.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And, no matter how much time you have sober, you're constantly getting molded. And improving. It's when people think that they've, got it,
Probably the challenges that I've faced in probably the last 3 or 4 years have been the hardest of my sobriety.
Yeah.
The difference is now I'm sober. I've got community. I've got support.
Yeah.
Like it, and a lot of the challenges that I've gone through have been for the better.
Yeah.
But they're challenges. You mentioned foster. Your 2 kids are adopted?
Yep.
I went through the same thing.
Yeah.
I accidentally adopted. It's a long story. But point is like that was one of the hardest things I ever went through. I had a little guy in my home for 2 years and you're like, what's going to happen with him? You know? And then all of a sudden, like, it was so stressful, and DCF checking in and this, that, I could have never done that, not sober and not with the support that I have, and not without God either.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the whole thing was God led.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's start landing this plane, shall we?
Okay.
Do you know I have a doppelganger?
You have a doppelganger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of Christ Fellowship.
Do you know who is it?
Ryan McDermott.
Is your doppelganger?
You know how many times I have been stopped?
Really?
As Pastor Ryan McDermott.
Well, he has a sleeve. You have a sleeve.
Yes.
Similar haircut.
Christ Fellowship was doing a baptism at the beach a couple years back, and me and Amanda and the kids were leaving as Christ Fellowship was showing up.
Yeah.
2 times as we were walking off the beach, I got paused and asked, hey, Pastor Ryan, where should we go for the baptisms? I'm like, I'm not Pastor Ryan.
That's not who I am.
Another time at a dog park, a lady stopped me. Are you a pastor at Christ Fellowship? I'm like, let me guess. Ryan McDermott?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope, that's not me.
Yeah.
There you go.
But I want to get him on the show too.
Okay.
Because I just love the way that he talks and presents, and
Yeah.
he's a very good communicator.
Yep.
Tell me if you can remember this. Was it last Sunday? Pastor Todd said something, and I've been trying to remember how he said this because I want to put the recovery spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
It was something to the tune of, if church or whatever becomes unnecessary, then your relationship with Jesus becomes optional. Do you remember how he worded?
So he was talking about parents. If parents teach their kids that church is optional, then they will look at Jesus as unnecessary.
Got it.
So is how as parents do we prioritize taking our children to church? Do we help them to understand that church is very important? Do our kids see us reading the Bible? Do we pray with our kids? Those kind of spiritual pieces. If we don't do those things, our kids won't do those things.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to try and put a recovery spin on it, because when I heard it, I'm like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You know? So I got to come up with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I think with our kids, we do have to, at some point, age appropriate, explain to them that, alcohol doesn't work for us. Drugs aren't an answer for us.
Yeah.
So my that kids they understand.
Know. Yeah, my kids know. And, they know about the podcast and everything, and they hear it, and they hear the calls that we take, and I don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, the wrong thing, but I'm just doing my thing.
I think for your kids to know that we're helpers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have an opportunity to help people through some really tough stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's inspirational to kids.
Yeah.
They'll want to be helpers too.
So Ryan's an app. What, Ben?
I just have a funny little story
about me?
About kids.
Oh, go ahead.
I was in my truck, and in the truck, man, I have to take calls. And Kai, at the time he was probably 4, almost 5.
Yeah.
And he just randomly says to me from the back seat, he's like, "Hey, Daddy, when I grow up, can I go to detox?" I'm like, Kai, what's detox? Oh, where all your friends go. Because he would listen to all the. I have a video of this.
Yeah.
I just so happened to be recording.
Wow.
Like, it was the wildest thing. I'm like, oh man.
Oh boy, you might need to undo that. Yeah. So Ryan, Ben, you'd be happy to know that Ryan's an avid cook.
I do enjoy cooking. Yeah.
An avid barbecue.
I do enjoy making barbecue. Yeah.
So you have a green egg?
I have a Kamado grill, but I also have a pellet grill.
Yeah.
Tom, how's that help me? Nobody cooks for me.
Well, it's because you eat the same crap day in and day out. He literally shows up today with a container full of just plain thawed out shrimp.
12 ounces. I'm not feeling too hot over here right now. Like sweating out. What's the chemical in?
Mercury?
Probably.
Disgusting.
Just a big old bowl of shrimp.
It was gross. I didn't have time to prep my food, so
he's bodybuilding. Stuff.
Yeah.
What's your master's degree in?
It's a seminary degree, ministerial leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Pretty crazy. Well, high school dropout.
What else is something interesting about you that we should know?
Let's see.
Get that mic closer to you. Keep drifting away from it.
I don't know. Like I said, one of the things in recovery, I study myself, and I encourage everybody to study themselves and what works for you. So I got sober at 28. When I was 29, I quit smoking. I waited 6 months, and then I started running. And in sobriety, I've run 13 full marathons.
Wow.
And a bunch of half marathons. And so one of the things that I have learned about myself is running. For me, it is good physically, of course, but for my emotional and my spiritual health, it's incredibly important. So like if I'm wrestling with something or dealing with something heavy, if I go out and run 5-6 miles in the Florida heat, I'm out in the creation with the creator, wrestling through it. On the other end of that run, I'm physically exhausted. It's incredibly less important than it was on the beginning of the run. And I'm able to deal with it that much better by doing that. And so I've had to commit myself to doing that, running 3-4 times a week for the last 17 years, 16 years, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goes back to
But I had to figure it out, right? I had to learn what do I need to do in my recovery journey? What works best for me?
So many leave out the physical component. We talk about it so much on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I think regimenting our lives for those of us who have come out of chaos is really important, right? Like I wake up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. I read the Bible every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. I mostly read on this app, the YouVersion Bible app, and it tracks how often, and it gives you a streak. And currently my streak is like 2,100 days in a row that I haven't missed reading the Bible. And that's been incredibly important in my sobriety, is having that regimented life, right? Doesn't mean I don't have exciting things or do fun stuff, but there are some things that are non-negotiables in my day that I know I need to do in order for the rest of the day to be successful. And so some of that is the exercise. Some of that is the consistent quiet time with God, reading the Bible. Again, like we talked about, having community and making community a priority. There are some things that I know I have to do. So.
Yeah. That's a long streak.
Well, and they've only been doing this streak for about that long, right? Like before that, they wouldn't have tracked it. I could honestly say for the last 7 or 8 years, I haven't missed a day of reading the Bible. At least a few verses, if not a few chapters a day. It really helps my brain to function, right? It really,
That's great. Well, Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend.
Yeah.
Last question. Favorite restaurant in Palm Beach County?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
It's hard.
I had to ask him. He's a foodie. You're a foodie.
Yeah. So it's a special occasion restaurant, but Buchan on the island is.
Bro,
Buchan,
that is so
good.
weird you just said that. I just said Buchan in my head for some reason.
It's so
and that's
good,
not
man.
my favorite restaurant.
What's your favorite?
Oh, I don't know.
Dude, I just saw they opened another Beats.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Riviera Beach.
There's another one in Palm Beach Gardens.
Yeah. Buck's Coal Fired. We got to go try it.
Wait a second. What are you talking about?
There's a New Haven style pizza place down off North Lake called Buck's Coal Fired.
Where?
It's in Lake Park.
Maybe that's what that kid was talking about. It wasn't actually a Beats.
No. Today, as I was driving to the office from taking my dad back home, I passed an Beats on.
So that place in Stewart that Portnoy gave like the 8.5 or whatever.
Fantini's.
I think they've done a few more in the county now, in Palm Beach County. So they are New Haven style. They're coming.
So Beats is popping up everywhere. I just picked some girl up from Detox the other day, and there's one right off of Broadway at Riviera Beach. Not the best neighborhood, but
Yeah.
Have you had a Beats?
Like a New Haven style pizza?
No, it's legit called a Beats.
that brand.
Yeah,
no, I have not had that. No.
There's one down in Del Rey.
Yep.
And now there's a couple of them popping up. What?
you told me there was no good chicken wings here on the last episode.
Oh, a Beats.
Bro, a Beats,
Yeah,
bro. I was
Beats
drawing
is
a
good.
blank.
So I like
And
trees.
Flanagan's. I've been thinking about that since.
Trees.
Yeah.
Flanagan's is good.
Trees in Royal Palm, they will run them through the oven twice for you if you ask them to. So you get double crispy.
Let's go get wings at Trees one of
We
these.
should do that. It's legitimately my favorite.
Really?
You want to go, Ben?
Yeah.
I've never been too
Just gotta
excited
get 'em- you
about
gotta
it.
get 'em-
You
so they're not.
You and Gam took me.
So some people
Yeah.
love the giant wing, right?
I don't like that.
I don't like that, right? I like a good skin ratio where you got a lot of crunch and some meat, but good crunch, good flavor. It's probably the least healthy thing. Let's take the fattiest piece, fry it in fat, dip it in fat and sugar, and eat it. It's great.
Yeah, but you
It's my
get some
favorite.
carrots and celery.
It's my favorite. I love wings.
I love wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like Thirsty Turtles wings? Because he shot this down the other day.
Everybody tells me that it is the best. I have not had them.
You've not.
Not in a way where I would say, well, these are the absolute best. Like we've got a brass ring out in Royal Palm, and everybody says there's a brass ring on over here somewhere that's
off US
fantastic. But the one in Royal Palm is not the same.
The original one off of US 1, just, is it like a block south of North Lake?
Yeah.
That's the one that's good. The other ones,
yeah, I've tried the other ones.
They just can't duplicate. I don't know what it is.
No, the hot sauce is like ketchup-y in a way.
Oh, I don't like that.
Amanda loves their
Do you
hot
leave
wing.
this in the episode? Is this banter in the episode?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you gonna hashtag all these businesses that we listed?
No, these are, free shout outs.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any other questions, Ben? You have any random questions?
No.
You like making beats?
I do like making beats. Yeah. And not a beats, but I like making
and not the vegetable.
Well, I do like making those too.
Music beats?
Yeah, like making music, weird sounds and things.
Who do you make that for? Like
just for
rappers
fun.
or like
No, just from
EDM?
It's mostly weird ambient sounds and stuff. It's just fun. It's just fun. My wife got a master's with me and then went back to get another master's. She's wrapping up a counseling degree in 2 weeks. And so I'm like, well, I guess I could read books at night while she's at class. Or I could get some strange synthesizers and drum machines and make strange noises. So that's what I went
fun.
with. It's fun.
Sometimes I walk in here first thing in the morning and Tom's editing, house music just bumping.
Oh, yeah. You told me you love electronic music.
I do.
Yeah.
We were just talking about too, and I'm kind of half joking, but maybe I'm not. Tom wants to go to Sunset Music Festival in Tampa.
Who plays there? Is that
it's
EDM?
like a 2-day. It might be 3-day now, but it's a 2-day EDM festival.
No, people don't wear clothes at those. I wouldn't.
There's a sober section.
He's
they're
just
still
never
not wearing
been.
clothes.
I just want to go to watch Tom in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it.
Like his redneck.
You're just gonna stand still though, right? Are you gonna dance?
No, I would dance at that. Yeah, nobody knows me. You kidding?
Just put on your Jenko jeans.
Yeah. I would love that. I would have an absolute blast.
And that's why I want to go to watch Tom dance.
I don't know if Amanda would sign off on that or not.
Yeah,
tell her you're going with me. It'll be
stick
fine.
with the kids for the weekend. I'm going to the EDM festival.
You want to go?
No, I don't.
I don't advise going to those in sobriety. That was a big thing in my active addiction. I grew up in the rave scene in South Florida.
Yeah.
And I went to one
So
when I had 3 years sober, and I was like, it's just, I actually felt bad for the people in the crowd.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah. No,
I'm like, you all don't look like you're having fun.
No, a pile of people roll in. And
Yeah, it's not the same. But I would go to watch Tom dance.
Yeah.
That's
would
my
be pretty
motivator.
I think we should go. When is it? Summer Spring Festival?
They haven't posted it yet because they skipped 2024 because they're getting a new
You guys
venue.
go up with your rock recovery tent. You set it up.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
You give out some literature.
Yeah.
You
Give
write
out
the whole thing on.
water bottles and
Water
Celsius.
bottles. Yeah.
You know, some
liquid
stickers.
IV. Don't get dehydrated. Here's your electrolytes, you know.
You might be onto something, Mr. Labs.
You can make that work.
We can bring you along and you can, rein people in if you're getting a little too rambunctious. Come with me.
Guys, come on. Let's chill out over here a little bit. Take a seat. What are you doing with that pacifier?
I do not advise going to music festivals in early recovery. I just want to throw that out there.
You
for
already
the
said
listeners.
that.
I'm just really hitting it home.
Yeah.
But we could go. You can go to music festivals.
Yeah.
You just have to be spiritually fit.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we're taking Ryan.
keep you all in line.
All right, Ryan. I'm just kidding. We're not going to go with Ryan. We may go, but we won't take you.
All right.
That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.